If you want to understand the soul of America, start with a single word: liberty. It's carved into monuments, recited in schools, and woven into the country's DNA. To an American, tyranny is the ultimate evil, and freedom is the ultimate good. But if you want to understand the soul of China, and the 1.4 billion people who live inside that civilization, you must learn a very different word: Luan. It loosely translates to chaos. But in the Chinese psyche, it carries a weight far heavier than a traffic jam or a noisy street. Luan means collapse. It means famine. It means warlords carving the nation into pieces. It means the breakdown of civilization itself. To the Western mind, the opposite of tyranny is freedom. But in China, shaped by thousands of years of a different story, the opposite of tyranny is Luan. This creates a profound misunderstanding between two worlds that think they are debating politics, when they are actually debating trauma, memory, and fear. Western observers see a surveillance state and censorship and ask, why don't the Chinese rise up? Why don't they demand democracy? What they don't realize is that they're projecting American psychology onto a civilization shaped by 4 millennia of upheaval. I understand both worlds. I was born in Singapore, raised in a former British colony, educated in the Western tradition, and spent over a decade in New York City. I understand the seductive clarity of freedom, but I also understand the Asian fear of chaos. I grew up during Singapore's 1964 racial riots. I watched order collapse. I saw fear in my mother's eyes, a woman who had fled the violent partition of India and Pakistan in 1947, one of the bloodiest population movements in history. To her generation of Asians, order wasn't restrictive. It was survival. So today, let's go deeper into the meaning of Luan, and why China has accepted a social contract so different from the West. China's history moves in cycles. Strong central government brings peace and prosperity. Weak central government brings suffering. The wound still shaping China's worldview is the Century of Humiliation. From the 1840s to 1949, 100 years of invasion, collapse, occupation, and fear. The British and French burned the Summer Palace to the ground. The Qing dynasty fell. Warlords carved the country into fiefdoms. Japan invaded and millions died. This is not abstract history, it's a living scar. Even after 1949, chaos did not vanish. The Cultural Revolution exploded from within, tearing society apart. For China's current leadership, these moments are not distant stories. They are warnings. They do not see the world through the lens of democracy versus dictatorship. They see order versus collapse. They believe their core duty, their legitimacy, comes from preventing chaos at all costs. So when the student protests of 1989 erupted, the West saw brave calls for democracy. China's leadership saw something else entirely: the first tremors of national disintegration. They had just watched the Soviet Union collapse after loosening political control. Their conclusion was simple: rapid political liberalization can destroy a nation. Here is a question for you, and I genuinely want to see your answer in the comments. If your nation had lived through repeated collapses, would you value freedom more or stability more? Part B. Cinematic rewritten script to video. Ready? This historical trauma creates a deep divide in how East and West define human rights. Ask an American, and you'll hear about freedom of speech, press, and the vote. But look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It also lists food, shelter, and safety, and for many Chinese people, shaped by decades of brutal poverty before the 1980s, these physical rights come first. Consider this: in 1980, over half of China lived in extreme poverty. Today, China claims to have eliminated extreme poverty by its national standards, and by World Bank metrics fewer than 5% remain in that category. This is the largest poverty reduction project in human history. Political philosopher John Rawls argued that the fairness of a society should be measured by how it treats its least advantaged members. So by that measure, who has improved the bottom 50% more over the last 40 years. In America, the bottom half has seen stagnant wages. In China, the bottom half has risen more than any population in recorded history. And consider safety today in nearly any Chinese city. You can walk at 3 a.m. without fear. Can you confidently say the same for New York, London, or Los Angeles? This is the trade-off: less political liberty, more stability and opportunity. And the Chinese people, according to surveys like the Edelman Trust Barometer, consistently express some of the highest levels of trust in their government, often above 80%. In the U.S., trust in government sits near 33%. Western critics dismiss China's numbers as brainwashing. But 134 million Chinese tourists travel abroad every year. They see Western media. They see Western freedoms. And still, by choice, they go home. Not because they're blind, but because they see a system that, in their view, works for them. This brings us to the most dangerous misunderstanding between the U.S. and China: the American missionary impulse. America believes it has a moral duty to export democracy. It supports revolutions, confident that once a dictator falls, freedom will bloom. But China looks at Iraq, Libya, and the Arab Spring and sees something else: chaos, civil war, refugees, Luan unleashed. So when American politicians say, "We stand with the people of China against the CCP," it sounds noble in Washington. But in Beijing, it sounds like a threat, aimed at the very structure holding the nation together. To a country that has lived through centuries of collapse, destabilization is not liberation. It is existential danger. Consider Hong Kong in 2019. Western media portrayed the protests as heroic battles for freedom. China saw firebombs, attacks on police, and the unraveling of order. And they saw something else: hypocrisy. When American or British protesters attack government buildings, they are prosecuted. When Hong Kong protesters do it, they are celebrated. The national security law that followed was seen in the West as the death of freedom, but in Beijing as the restoration of stability. Does this mean China's system is perfect? Absolutely not. Its greatest challenge is the challenge of success. As a society gets richer, people eventually want a voice. China knows this. One senior leader, Wang Qishan, once told political theorist Francis Fukuyama, "The most dangerous moment is transition. You cannot push 1.3 billion people to the edge of a cliff. Too much openness risks chaos. Too little risks stagnation." China will not adopt the American model. When they look at the U.S., they don't see a nation to imitate. They see a country storming its own capital, struggling with polarization, and unable to build consensus. To them, America looks like a nation flirting with its own version of lawn. So where does that leave us? China is trying to build something new. A system that is responsive without copying Western democracy. Whether it succeeds or fails is unknown, but the experiment is enormous. And this is why it would be unwise for the West to base its strategy on the assumption that China must eventually become a mirror image of itself. History rarely has a single destination. The West is shaped by liberty. The East is shaped by order. And here lies the core misunderstanding for China. The great fear is chaos. For the West, the great fear is tyranny. These aren't opposites. They're reflections of different historical scars. If we don't understand this, we will keep talking past each other. And the alternative, a clash between two nuclear powers, risks creating exactly what both civilizations fear most: chaos on a scale humanity has never seen. If this breakdown gave you a clearer perspective, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Do you believe a society should prioritize freedom or order? And why? Your answers shape the next video.